fetus's life, but whether you sacrifice yourself in order to save other life is up to more individual moral autonomy. State can't legally oblige individual to sacrifice their own life in order to help other being, other life. That is why we oppose this kind of motion that government should not legally ban abortion at all stages of pregnancy. Based on this idea that leader opposition extended, I'd like to talk about three issues in my speech. First of all, causal link between commitment and responsibility. Secondly, the distinction between moral obligation versus legal obligation. Thirdly, the trade-off between external social benefit versus sacrificing pregnant women as a tool of social engineering. Whether the trade-off is necessary and legitimate. First question is about the causal link between commitment and responsibility. That's what Deputy Prime Minister explained. Because you made a commitment, you bear responsibility for the consequences of your own choices. Please look at the reality. How is it possible for drunken women or raped teenagers to make a conscious commitment about their pregnancy? How can it be a conscious decision? Oftentimes, the victims of this kind of policy are the women in the poor community without literacy or without expertise and knowledge about reproductive rights, ladies and gentlemen. When you criminalize abortion, when you call this sin and crime, you undermine the public discourse, the public discussion under their model. It's harder for women to seek for any consultancy or the consulting from the doctor to the medical personnel because it's a crime and a bar on their side of the house. You unnecessarily undermine the ability of these individuals to make a rational and conscious decision and commitment in the first place. Therefore, the principle about the causal link between commitment and responsibility does not make sense. It does not make any sense here. Second issue, no, thank you. Sorry, I'm talking too fast. The distinction between moral obligation and legal obligation. The response from Deputy Prime Minister is, it's very tautological. The life begins because sperm needs the eggs, right? That's why we are debating here. That kind of tautological rationale is what Deputy Prime Minister explained. We are happy to explain the counter-analysis of why fetus shouldn't be recognized as a legal agency, because this is a debate about whether government should legally protect individuals as a fetus. The reason why the fetus does not have agency is because it does not have any rationality or its ability to have a sense of a human being at all. Even viable babies or infants have a basic level of humanity or sense and desires. As opposed to that, the fetus is biologically completely dependent on the mother's, the nutrition provided by mother's body. It has no agency at all. So let's make a legal trade-off. The legal rights for fetus versus legal rights for women. Which legal rights are more explicit, more accountable for the government to consider? Of course, the women's interests or pregnant mother's interests have already been materialized in our society versus unborn babies who have no legal interest at all. Therefore, as a trade-off, it's legitimate for the government to prioritize the legal interests of pregnant women. Now, the second principle here is that it's legitimate for the government to legally grant, what kind of rights government legally grant is differentiated by the stage of development. For example, children do not have full same legal rights as adults, like age of consent. They can't consent to contract, for example. They don't have voting rights, but versus adults have full autonomy and full legal rights. Moreover, what about the comparison between children or baby versus fetus? In exactly the same way, the level of legal rights the government grants should be differentiated. In exactly the same logics, the sperms and eggs do not have any right. Under their logic, the potentiality or fertilization is a reason to give legal rights. Then sperms and eggs might potentially have legal rights. But that's crazy, ladies and gentlemen, because we have to recognize what kind of stage of development of a human being, what kind of legal rights should be acknowledged. At the specific point of unborn baby and being a fetus in a utero in a mother's body, it's legitimate for the criminal justice system or government or any policy makers to prioritize more explicit women's rights. Finally, even if we acknowledge the fetus is alive under their scenario, even if we accept all the principles from the other side of the past, the individuals do not bear any legal responsibility to help other people's life by sacrificing ourselves because we have a right to defend our own interests. For example, there is the man who is almost drowned in the sea. Can you dive and save him, right? It's up to your individual judgment. Government cannot legally oblige you to sacrifice yourself and dive into the sea and help that person. For example, what if the house is in fire and you have to dive into the house and save some other people? You have no legal obligation to sacrifice your life, sacrifice yourself in order to help somebody, some other people already in the status quo. In exactly the same way, even if the fetus is recognized as alive, pregnant women do not have any legal obligation to sacrifice her own body, sacrifice her own autonomy in order to save the life. The reason is there's no universal answer about what morality is absolute in this specific context. Maybe pro-choice is legitimate, maybe pro-life is legitimate, but the answer is divisive. There's no universal answer. Thereby, democratically elected government has no discretion to impose the value judgment, especially when imposition of value judgment disproportionately invades the rights and privacy of individual. And that is why this kind of trade-off should never be legally made. Go ahead.
Under your side, you can still abort your fetus at 9 months. Why is it that once they're out, somehow they're protected?
Okay, we are happy to take a harder stance. That's what the leader of opposition clarified in this debate. Therefore, that contradiction does not exist in this debate. You are engaging with some other different scenario. Moving on to the final clash about trade-off between external benefit versus sacrifice. We acknowledge that many benefits that they have explained would happen on their side of the house, like activation of feminism movement, like medical research development, or the activation of education. But the question is why those kind of benefits should happen at the expense of sacrificing a lot of pregnant women who lose her career, who lose their futures, who lose their own bodily autonomy, ladies and gentlemen. That is qualitatively equivalent as like human experiment. You are using the most valuable individual as a tool for social engineering to generate some social change. The question here is pregnant women are not responsible for activating external discussion. Pregnant women have no legal or moral obligation to activate any external social, like economic circumstances. It's unfair for the government to sacrifice this most valuable individual as a tool to generate that kind of interest. It's opposite. The pregnant women, like teenagers or pregnant women, are the most silenced, most disenfranchised individuals. The interest of these people should be prioritized over the feminist movement or over the government or any policy, ladies and gentlemen. And that is why it's completely fair that we focus on these victims and prioritize their decision, their emotional judgment, ladies and gentlemen. Moreover, under their model, quality of life is rather undermined. As I said before in my speech, that any open discussion or necessary discourse or consultancy will be like diminished because you ban abortion, you criminalize this act of abortion. Many women suffering in desperation have harder time to consult this kind of issue with their partner, family, or social support, or medical support openly in our society. That undermines the ways in which women can choose their own future rationally. We are happy to oppose. Thank you.